Genndy Tartakovsky's Primal, a show that I am no stranger to talking about on this channel. If you don't know, and for whatever reason still clicked on this video, Primal is an adult animated action series made by the legendary Genndy Tartakovsky. It follows a caveman named Spear and a T-Rex named Fang as they navigate a primitive and brutal world together. It's got a large, loyal fan base, critical and commercial success, and a goddamn Emmy to its name. But there is one thing that it very noticeably lacks, and that's really any form of merchandise, which is kinda weird, right? Although I'm really thankful it doesn't get the Rick and Morty treatment and they're not shitting out everything under the sun, there is definitely some potential for some high-end licensed products. And personally speaking, I kinda want some. Ultimately, instead of waiting, I just decided I'm gonna do it myself. Around the time that season 2 of Primal was airing, I stumbled across this picture. That, my friends, is a expertly made, custom Spear action figure. And it pretty much entirely inspired me to make this video right now. And I'm gonna do it a one-up. Not only am I going to create my own Spear, but also my own custom Fang for my own little Primal action figure line. Wish me luck, because I'm gonna fucking need it. First off, a little disclaimer. I've never done anything remotely close to this in my life. I've never really customized an action figure. I've never painted a miniature of any kind. I am, however, quite an artistic person, and I am a YouTuber, so I have no shortage of unjustified confidence. This isn't as much of a tutorial as it is a little adventure we're gonna go on. But enough procrastinating. Let's get our asses started here. It's time to talk materials, baby. What lies before you is the foundation of this project. The very clay we will use to shape our glorious creation. In other words, this is all the shit I bought. How much did it cost me, you ask? A lot. I'll reveal the final price, including absolutely everything, at the very end of our journey, but this is by far the most expensive video I've ever made. I did spend it all a year and a half ago and have just been sitting on this stuff. So according to girl math, it's actually completely free. Oh yeah, I did impulse buy this measurement cutting board thing, which is nice and helpful, but definitely not essential. I'll bring up any additional information on any of this stuff as we start to actually get our hands dirty, but for now, here's a quick rapid fire of all this. You will need something to sand with, something to sculpt with, paintbrushes, a shank, also known as a hobby knife, a nice long stick, some brown fabric, and various model paints. I bought 2 shades of blue, white and black, and the ever-elusive white boy starter kit. Now before we go any further, I think I need to introduce you to the donors. The 2 pre-existing action figures who will act as the base for our protagonists. First off, for our favorite Neanderthal Spear, we have... Stay with me now. Yeah, your eyes do not deceive you. That's the fucking Incredible Hulk. But once you get past the green, he is actually the correct stature, and details like his feet and face seem almost perfect. I believe this Marvel Universe Series 4 3.75-inch scale Hulk is the very same figure used by the guy who inspired me in the first place. Here's my game plan, the schematics, if you will. As you can see, my top priority, other than the green, is adding some hair, forging a mighty spear for him to wield, and a change of clothes. I just don't think they had flamboyant purple jeans back in caveman times. As drastic as Spear's transformation is gonna have to be, thankfully Fang shouldn't be too hard in comparison. I mean, that sure is already a fucking T-Rex. A Jurassic World T-Rex to be specific. I took a bit of a gamble on this when I ordered it because I didn't really know how big it was gonna be, but I was sold on the chomping action. The blueprint here shows that really all we need to do is a fresh coat of paint and adding her iconic fang tooth. Also, surprisingly, it actually scales really nicely to Spear, I think. Now on to our next step, prepping. This step pretty much only applies to Spear. Before we can do any sculpting or painting, he needs some serious work. Let's start by sanding this weird indent on his pecs and removing as much of his lower pants detail as we can. I do already have various grades of regular sandpaper on hand, but of course, me being me, I also wasted some of my hard-earned money to try these sanding needles. They do seem to be incredibly coarse, so I figured they would come in handy ripping and tearing some plastic away. And it sorta worked. Don't get me wrong, I went to town on this motherfucker, and it was kinda handy, but I quickly resorted to just using the hobby knife to quickly slice away unwanted plastic. Remember to be extremely careful doing anything like this if you value your fingers, by the way. I was quite lucky to only sustain 4 or so minor boo-boos because I was being what could be considered a dumbass. Oh, we aren't done yet, bucko. I then had to grind away as much of those back pockets as I could, and then using regular sandpaper, I attempted to smooth it all out as much as possible. Quick tip, for a smooth finish, you generally want to slowly work from coarse sandpaper to much more fine sandpaper. I'm obviously not looking for perfection here. I don't think that is remotely realistic for me, but it's still going to make a world of difference, I'm sure. As you can see, I got rid of the ripped pants texture around the knees, and I don't have to worry too much about anything higher up since that will eventually all be covered up. Next up on the agenda, I think this boy needs a haircut. Check out the cut, bro. Business in the front, party in the back. There is only one thing left to do during this prep stage. We need to create Spear's spear. For that, I got this nice chunk of lumber right here. Fun fact, I actually cut down a great tree and tirelessly whittled it down myself to exactly 1/8 of an inch in diameter. Ignore that fucking Hobby Lobby price tag. Ugh. My workspace is now full of Hulk bits. That's better. Eagle-eyed viewers may have already noticed I already have a hole drilled into the hand for the spear. I don't have any footage of it simply because I didn't do it. So I actually had to go to my dad and ask him if he could do it for me. And he was an unbelievably good sport about it. I mean, can you imagine someone asking you to drill a hole in something for them and they dead-ass hand you this? I cannot exaggerate how helpful this was. It's a crazy precise step and he literally did it perfectly. But we do need to cut this thing down to size. It's given off some serious berserk vibes at the moment. About 7 inches should be more than enough. I mean, that's fucking huge, dude. Especially because keep in mind we are still gonna have to add a spearhead up there eventually. I'm sure you're all missing her a bit, so we'll give Fang some attention first in our next chapter, Sculpting. The basis for this chapter is quite simple. There are some very important elements that are noticeably missing here that we need to add in by sculpting onto the figures themselves. For this task, I needed some sort of clay. I settled on Milliput, Standard Edition. According to their own words, Milliput is a versatile epoxy putty which is highly adhesive to most materials. Milliput can be sculpted and once cured, can be machined, drilled, tapped, turned, filled, sawn, sandpapered, and painted. Opening it up, it consists of 2 nice meaty logs. Milliput should theoretically only harden if equal parts of these 2 clays are combined and mixed thoroughly. Here is a prime example of what not to do. This needs to be mixed and incorporated way more than this. If you can still see 2 different colors, you gotta keep working it. Although a cool test, this first attempt at making Fang's tooth was an absolute failure. It did not harden correctly at all. Okay, let's give that tooth another try. I did it off camera, which was definitely my choice. I totally didn't just forget to hit the record button, but I made it pretty much the exact same as the failed one. And while I was at it, I used some clay to build up some mass around the spot it's gonna go, so it'll be able to rest on top of something with some clearance so the mouth will still be able to open and close. Okay, let's get back to our boy Spear. First off, we gotta glue his head in place so we can finally get some new hair on that bald ass head. That was surprisingly fun, probably my favorite part of this project so far. And after cleaning it up a bit, I think it turned out pretty spot on. Oh, it's still kind of looking a lot like the fucking Incredible Hulk in a blonde wig, but trust me, the next chapter is gonna bring it all to life. Side note, I very carefully crafted the spear and spearhead off camera. Again, a totally purposeful decision. I totally did not miss the record button again by 2 fucking millimeters. Once everything completely hardened, I superglued the spearhead and Fang's tooth in place, and this house is finally starting to look like a home. Paint time! Probably the most important step of the painting process, and ironically the one I'm completely ready to botch right now, is the priming. The only primer I have on hand is a filler primer, and it comes out extremely thick. I really don't want to destroy or cover any of the muscle detail on Spear or the scale texture on Fang, so that is what led me to my somewhat questionable decision. This is a matte spray finish. I will be using it later on to seal the paint, but I read somewhere that you can supposedly use it as a sort of substitute for primer, and that was enough for my lazy ass. So I tossed them in a box and headed outside. I'm probably spraying it a bit too close and putting quite a heavy coat on, but it is what it is. Sorry again for the especially bad camera work here. I was multitasking between holding a camera with one hand, spraying with the other hand, and constantly glancing over my shoulder to make sure my sweet beloved dog Kobe doesn't run over, stick his head in, and get his ass pepper sprayed by this shit. Okay, now we are ready to start painting. We'll start with Spear. It very quickly occurred to me that in order to get a somewhat accurate skin tone on him, I would need to do some expert color mixing. For whatever reason though, the next concoction of a color I mixed up was way too light. I don't know what the fuck I was smoking here, dude. It took feeling it out with a few different layers, which did end up giving it some depth, I'm sure. Fucking Attack on Titan looking ass. But in the end, I found just the right color. The trick was using a more light color and an orange skin tone and mixing it with some of the pink rose color to give it some of that warmth, as well as the slightest, tiniest drop of black to give it that ever so slight gray hue. All I had to do from there was paint his hair black, use this handy dandy Gundam paint marker to add in all that glorious chest hair that every respectable caveman ought to have. I almost totally forgot, but don't worry guys. I remembered the nipples. And since the microscopic amount of paint that was once his eyes got covered by the skin tone, I used some white paint and a toothpick to give him a quick lobotomy, and the Gundam marker absolutely came in clutch with adding the pupils and cleaning up around the mouth and hair. Only one aspect of Spear remains unpainted, and that's his spear. For that I had to pull some regular acrylic paint I already had, an off-white yellow for the cloth part, a reddish brown for the wood, and a metallic gray for the spearhead itself. Just to be safe, I really watered down the brown and used it more like a stain, just because the hole in Spear's hand and this stick are basically the exact same size, and I didn't want a thick layer of paint either preventing it from going in, or worse, the paint being scraped off as it slides into his hand. With all that done, let's move on to Fang. Her base coat should thankfully be a lot less guesswork. I'm simply going to take this light greenish blue paint and make it a little darker with some black. This paint looks so nice when it dries, holy shit. But now we have to do the stripe pattern, which I'm quite afraid isn't going to be so easy. As you can see, I've already mapped it all out from looking at screenshots of the show and translating it the best I could. I then tried to the best of my ability to freehand it onto the figure with pencil outlines. And finally, using this much darker blue paint, I got straight to work. I did a bit of it on camera, as you can see here with the first stripe I did as a test, but due to the intricate nature of the painting and the way I had to constantly manhandle the thing in different ways to get the right control over what the fuck I was doing, I elected to just turn off the camera, throw on a YouTube video in the background, and just grind it out. You know you're fucking locked in when you put on a summoning salt video that you've already watched. In all, this was the single most time-consuming and stressful part of the entire project, but boy was it worth it. It turned out better than I could have ever imagined. The paint dried so well, giving it such a clean look. It's not perfect by any means, none of this project is, but in all seriousness, I am so damn proud of this right now. Mixing some off-white with my model paint white, I painted Fang's fang, teeth, claws, and also did some other minor touch-ups here and there, as well as adding some very important last-minute details to Spear. And just like that, we are done with the painting. We are officially on the home stretch now, but we are not quite out of the woods yet, because, well... Finishing touches. In the show, Spear wears a loincloth that wraps all the way around his waist and extends down to just above his knees. On our figure, that is about an inch worth of length. For this, I purchased two different fabric options, a leather texture and a rougher felt texture. I just don't really know what Spear's loincloth is even made of. It's definitely from an animal, but is it tanned leather or is it an animal hide with a fur texture? The leather is darker and has a smoother appearance, which makes me feel like it's more similar, but I'm also really drawn to this one for some reason. I think I'm gonna have to go with my gut on this one. After cutting out a fine chunk of it, I began adding all the damage details to the top and bottom. I started out using scissors for this, but it just wasn't precise enough, so before long that hobby knife that wounded me earlier started talking in my ear like the damn Green Goblin. I did a quick fitting, sprayed the final coats of sealer on them, ended Spear's time as a nudist by permanently gluing on his clothes, and with that, we are done. As promised, it's time to reveal the total price for this project. It cost me exactly $138.12, which is quite a lot of money. But I have to say, I am so proud of this project. As someone who has never attempted anything like this before, it truly turned out better than I could have ever expected. Is it perfect? Absolutely fucking not. There are some paint flaws, there's a lot of steps that could have used some better execution or techniques. I mean, I'm sure there are countless things that could be done to improve on this further. Probably the biggest shortcoming of these figures is that after the painting step, they have become permanently stuck in their respective poses. I've tested it quite a lot, and if any joints move, it just tears paint away and needs constant repairs. So this is how they're going to stay forever. Not exactly the superposable action figures I dreamed of, but nonetheless, I am so happy and thankful for how it turned out. Not to brag or anything, but I think they look pretty fucking good. And I now effectively have a Spear and Fang to put on my shelf. I really hope that this project of mine inspires anyone out there who is interested to try it for themselves, just like how many others inspired me to do so. If I could give one piece of advice on doing this sort of thing or anything remotely like it would be to just go out and try. If there's something you want that doesn't exist, make it yourself. No matter your skill level or your knowledge, just go out, do your best, and have fun. Worst case scenario, you can always just try again. And best case scenario, well, you might just make something really cool. I want to thank you so much for watching. It really means the most to me. Of course, I hope you enjoyed this one. It was so much fun to make. I'm definitely interested in making more videos like this at some point in the future. Making some more shit with my bare hands. I think that'll be really fun from time to time. And also, here's a quick little sneak peek at a possible future project. I would love to turn this blank bootleg figure into a fully posable Samurai Jack. Obviously, these projects are going to be a lot more fewer and far between than my regular uploads due to all the planning, gathering materials, and of course, doing the fucking project. But it is something I'm really excited about, and I really hope you stick around for that, as well as all the other random, crazy videos I decide to make. But that's about all I got for now. I hope you have an absolutely amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one.
I want some cheeseburgers just to eat. I'm talking ketchup, my nigga mustard on the beat. You gotta put a lot of lettuce, please, because I like to have a lot of grease. I remember eating outside with my whole team. Now a nigga gotta stay home cause of quarantine.